Okay, we're going to do one on Greek and Roman sky gods. I did a recent one on storm gods, and it showed you connections all the way from India to Ireland and how they all really actually work together, and how the Proto-Indo-Europeans had brought that, and how they slightly turned into their own variations. And due to all of the side people, and not the original 12, but you get farther into that, and it just deviated from each other quite a bit. But I want you to notice that when we look at these, and we'll go to A to Z on them, it's just the sky gods, though, and known of weather and things like that, and bringers of seasons and so on. I want you to notice that a lot of them have wings on them, and so this is still that animistic type behavior where you have animism and animals and stuff, and of course, because there are winds, that goes with it real well. But there's also the effect that whenever birds fly, they use the wind, but they also cause wind whenever they flap their wings. And this even is a word that's used in the Bible whenever it's God's hovering above the waters. It uses the word ruach. And if you look at that in an ideogram, it strangely looks like either a bird hovering above water or maybe a spaceship. And people have quite often tried to use that to give you that connotation whenever they want to do the ancient aliens type thing and stuff. But you'll see a lot of them that have wings to them, and of course like stars and sunshine, black of night, and all those type of things. So we see a Nimoy here, and it's showing a green sprigs in her hand, and that she is well covered versus some of the other ones, and winged. But Atlas, the sky bearer that we're all familiar with, and it shows him holding up the sky, and he's got a red beard, but he has long, like dreadlocks in his hair, and matted his hair down. And that's seen in a lot of these people up here. Black people nowadays want to claim that it's only them that ever had hair like that, but you look at Celts and a lot of these people, they did certain hairstyles that are very much like it. But what I always thought was funny about this picture is you see how he's holding his back. He's not using both of his hands like he's supposed to be, like you think the Atlas is holding up the world. And of course, Atlas is what we call a map and so on, and the Atlas Mountains are in North Africa there. So this, when we talk about the ancient Greek and Roman gods, I've quite often said it, but I need to say it in this one too, that they aren't just gods of a little place right around one mountain of Olympus, but they're gods of the known world to all these people. And so you get something like Atlas, the Atlas Mountains. And if you look at Herodotus' old map, right next to it he shows Atlantis, and they thought the Nile came from there and was runoff from those mountains and so on. It goes back to an ancient history, but that's neither here nor there, and not for this. And they talk about aura, and aura is part of the breezes that come. Now, linguistics and everything is going to get into play in some of this, because aura, you think of that as being something glowing, and aurora and aura goes with the sun. So you'll see sun aspects in everything, and in all these religions and everything, for really a lot of them are variations of. And of course the sun is a major god, and he had the kids and all these things, and he's the savior of the seasons, and it all goes together quite well. But aura also, a person is said to have an aura around them, and you can think of that in a different way. Now there is the electromagnet thing that we know of today that you're probably thinking of, but people have a scent around them, or a woman would have perfume on them, and with the breeze she has an aura about her that reminds me of lilacs and blah blah blah. And we still use this concept today. It also goes with moisture, yeah, and humidity and things on that too, and we'll see that in there next. And so this aura has to do with sun and making rain and everything too. And conspicuously, Egypt was it was called Egypt by the Greeks, and we kept that from on that. But they called the fertile land there Kemet, but the name of their river was the river Or. And so when you talk about these ancient Aryans or Orions or Orions that are in ancient times, it's a people that have to do with the seasons and all these things. And It has to do with a lot of aspects of their cultures that's seen in a lot of other people's culture too. And that's one way we can actually see the effects of this type of religious theology going through different people and throughout the whole known world at the old ancient time. Boreas is the north wind, and you can see he's wearing the olive branch on the top. Looks like Jesus got a wings on him and everything, like the Aurora Borealis. Aurora Borealis. Put that together. See? Things go like that, and people don't know, and it's been beaten out of them to where they don't have the idea. Eos and the Dawn, and she again is winged. The Harpies and they're winged, and we'll get into that a little bit. Helios and the sun, and that's at the very end. Well, actually, it's the middle because he's Helios, but it shows a picture, that picture at the very end, and I'll talk more about him then. But notice that a lot of the Greek gods have us at the end of it, and is and on also. And so you take that off of it and you get their name plus deification almost. So you think Hele, and that has to do with the sun. And you wonder about these people, the Hellenes, and the children of the sun that I've talked about and made a video about, and how these were all sun worshippers and stuff. Hera, and the goddess of air, and Hera, era. It goes in together, but also the word era, like a length of time, has to do with it, but in a different aspect, in a funny way that you can put it together almost like a pun. And of course, Latin leading to current languages makes things like that happen on purpose, actually. From things like the sun in the sky and the sun that you have, and so Jesus is the sun god and the son of man and the son of, and it all works together. Hesperides and the seasons and the sunsets, and Hore, and what does that have to do with Horus? Well, we'll get there. Iris and rainbows, and we'll get there too. Nixt and night, nix, and words that without sun, so nicht, and even German words and everything come from this concept of night. Selene, and the moon goddess, and you can see the crescent behind her head, or it's on top of her head quite often, and our Luna, as we know of her and stuff. But believe it or not, in that video game that I show clips of every once in a while whenever I'm going into these, because D&D has all this in it, that's who a lot of my people pray to. You have to choose a god that you're going to pray to, and it's just a symbol in the way you do it. But whenever you do that throughout the day, and it gives you extra powers and stuff. But so it's kind of neat that it works with that theology deal. But Selene is one of the gods that I pray to with a lot of my characters, and whenever we have the summer festival, it's built on the goddess Selene. So then there's Zephyrs of the west wind. You can see they're always hooked up with a lot of greenery and stuff, and that has to do with summer and spring coming into summer and the greening of everything and stuff, and the green man later, and a few other things. And then there's Zeus, the sky god, and he's holding that funny lightning bolt that we've talked about so many times. So let's see if we can make a few more connections here whenever we look at this. This right here is actually the moon god, Selene, and sometimes it's a woman, sometimes it's a man. See, both of these, there's aspects that are yin and yang, that are male and female, and opposites. But there's also many versions of the thing where there's a male and a female version of everything. Like as in Apollo versus Selene, or Luna. And you can see how that works together. Luna, Selene, right? So, and Selena Dion. What? Okay, let's look into each one of these. But just a picture of her here. She's on flying horses like Pegasus. She's got red hair and what would look like a nightcap to a lot of people today, but looks very much like that Phrygian cap that we keep talking about. And here, instead of having the crescent behind her head, she has a full moon on top of her head. But because they drew the lines through it, looks like the Death Star and just waiting for a circle. If they had a little circle on there about right there, that would be the Death Star. And around the perimeter of it, you can see these swirl patterns that make up pretty much a swastika concept, but also with them going in and cursing on each other around and around and around. This is a maze, right? And so you can kind of get that idea. It also gives you a thought of waves and things like that, and people have made a lot of connotations to it. In between each one of those is a cubed out cross, and there is a literal cross on there. On what? And that predates Christ and everything too, but the cross symbol goes way back, way back, and the idea of Christos and being anointed and stuff is something that I've shown goes way back too, and the anointing oil and a lot of things that go with that. But let's get into this, because I don't want to get it too long, and you know me, I go long-winded, so I'm going to try to abbreviate what I would add in any way, but just give you a flavor, make connections. Aeolus, the king of the winds, he was appointed by Zeus to guard the storm winds, which he kept locked away inside the floating island of Aeolia, releasing them at the request of the gods to wreak their havoc. He was, in some essence, on the far side of the world, peekabooing right and left and letting loose the four winds. Right? And I could go off more. I'm just going to go on for now. Aether, what we talk about, the ether. And of course you can breathe ether and it knocks you out and stuff, but that's a different thing. But why did they make that connotation? Well, I'll tell you after this. I'll read through it. Aether, the primal god of the shining light of the blue sky. He was conceived as the substance of light, a layer of bright mist which lay between the dome of heaven and the lower air which surrounded the earth. So basically he's up above us at the tops of what mountains would be, clouds and up. And they say the reason they named ether knockout thing and stuff because you get a lack of air or oxygen being up on a mountain and it'll knock you out, and that there might be connections with that and that ether, and then how it also takes you to kind of like a God sleep. Oh, I'm going to take you to meet God, you know, type thing. So that works together, but either in ether. And then the concept of with and without applied to this word is where we also get the word either, like either or. And that's a totally different concept, but it still works off of it. A lot of people have thought, you know, funny words sometimes whenever you're growing up and you see words and you see something like technique, and you know that's not an English word, but it must have been gotten by, so it's French, and things like that. But then there are other words that are taken out of context that we use constantly, day in and day out, or over a period of time. You're familiar with it at least, and it really doesn't fit. And quite often there are slangs that way too, where it just doesn't make sense. And if you look at it, it makes you wonder what it even has to do with. Anyhow, let's go on and we'll see if we can make some more connections. Anime, or the anemoi, are the gods of the four directional winds and the heralds of the four seasons. Boreas, the north wind, was the lord of winter, which makes sense. Zephyros was west, as the bringer of spring, as I just showed you up earlier, and they're green looking and stuff. Euros is the east, was the god of autumn. Euros, that has to do with Europe. I'll be right back. And Notos, the south of summer. So the south wind of summer. I think they just left that out and made me just stagger. So we look at Boreas and we see the aurora borealis, and we know that, and the north wind comes down and stuff, so that's that. But they're giving aspects. I guess I have to dip in here real quick. They're giving aspects, and it looks like a person. Well, they got to draw something. And I've looked back at old ancient folklore in the oldest of times, and whenever certain things, other things would herald winter. You know, a winter fox would herald winter, or you know, so on. You know, you think the Eskimos would have polar bears herald winter. Well, what else heralds winter? Well, snow heralds winter. I mean, come on. Well, autumn actually heralds winter. Winter is winter. Snow is winter. What heralded it? Autumn. And the trees and the leaves falling and changing colors and things. So it goes with it. But it has that symbology that they used to write in writing whenever it was just symbols, ideograms and things, and it really looks kind of like a compass thing that we use on maps and everything. And there's that four winds concept, right? So Eurus was the east wind too, and that has something to do with EU means good. It has to do with Europa. Now Europa is a Phoenician goddess that came and made Europa, and that strange tale that they have of it, but here it says it comes from the east. I'll just go on. Anemoi, the second part of that, are the demonoids of the violent storm winds. So this is kind of yin and yang. They were the sons of the monster Typhus, kept locked away inside Tartarus, or the floating island of Aeolus, to be released only at the command of the gods. This is just like the Kraken that Poseidon or Neptune releases. And so whenever a big storm comes through, it's got to be blamed on something, and everything's blamed on the gods back then. And so how it goes with that. But you can see that this is that Titan story versus the other aspect and the later spreading aspect. This is the Titan story and its aspect. Still working together. But Typhon was that great 100-armed god and everything that has to do with volcano worship, even from way, way back when. No one knows when, really, and we'll probably never figure out whenever it started. Tartarus is seen as two different things. If you've seen my few videos I've done on Tartaria and the area that's out in Proto-Indo-European lands now, they used to call that, but you look on ancient maps, and Tartarus is Spain. Yeah, Hispaniola, Iberia. That thing's gone through a lot of changes through all of this. Probably got to do a video on just Spain. Anyhow, so next would be Arke, or Arke. So that's just a strange name in itself, for it has to do with arch and arca, like an archetypal, right? As in Archimedes, but as an arch, the strong way to build something. And the arch of a rainbow drawn in the sky. And a spanning from over here and over there. And if you chase it, you'll never get to it. It has more to do with the story of the Ark of the Covenant than a lot of people probably realized. So Arke is the messenger of the Titans. Yeah, this is for Hermes is seen as the straightforward messenger, but so the messenger of the Titans. She was the sister of Iris and the goddess of the lost second rainbow. I should put in a little video clip here with a guy going, "Double rainbows, man," and he starts crying, but if you've ever seen it. At the end of the Titan War, she was stripped of her wings and locked away inside the pit of Tartarus. And there we go again. And there's that original idea of hell that we all seem to have nowadays and everything, the pit of Tartarus. And that's in your Bible. It's the way that it tries to put it out. And then Gehenna and all these ideas. But that has to do with the volcano god too that people sacrificed to long ago. But that second rainbow too, and the idea that it's missing, also gives a connotation to the rainbow bridge of Asgard. And it's lost. And lately we've done some movies that contain that idea in there, and they've twisted a little bit and made a movie out of it. But it's still there. That's why I keep saying, a lot of this is just right in your face, and people aren't even paying attention or know about it. You don't know the real history of it and stuff, but through Dungeons and Dragons, folklore, all of my studies and everything, you get a different look on it than maybe somebody would if they picked up a book of what somebody wants you to think about Greek and Romans. So here's a neat one too. The next is Astraeus, and there's that us again too, so it's Astraea. And what is Estrella? Well, Estrella is a star. A star. Estrella. Yeah, and it has to do with Asherah and Astara and Inanna and all that. And stars. Astaroth. Yeah. And Azeroth and Azareth. Just depending on right there where you were at is what they call them. But Azareth, what's that? Add an N, Nazareth? I'll go on. Astrius, the Titan god of the stars. He was the father of the planets and the four seasons winds by Eos, the dawn. So this is one of those times where you see this incest thing with his daughter and stuff, and you're, oh my gosh, everything. Listen, it's really not meant to be that way. If there's only a couple of gods, and the gods can only make these things, then those two have to get together to do something. And who gets together? Well, it's got to be the main guy in this or that, and you get aspects from it. A lot of time it makes perfect sense. Other times it doesn't. But that's that idea, you know. And so there's another idea of that Astra Planetae. So this is basically the planets. And this is the gods of the 5 wandering stars or planets. They only knew about 5 stars, or 5 wandering stars, which is what planet means. And the rest of them are pretty much out of vision. Strangely, though, you can look in the Sumerians, and they actually had them in order with their gods. And they had them kind of with the right colors, too, as they made descriptions of them. And a lot of people have written too much into that. And, of course, Sitchin used that heavily in his deal, where he could kind of show it out. He really could have brought that out a whole lot more, too, because that is some of the tablets instead of just made-up stuff that shows you, here's a weird thing, and, you know, here's 12 hours in a day that goes off their clock, and 60 seconds and 60 minutes and 360 degrees in a circle, and it falls 1 degree per day through the fall and autumn and everything. Yeah, that all goes with it. And that's where we get that from, declamation of time. But these star planets is Astra Planetae was like the leader of these bright ones, was called Aeolus. And it's where you get kind of words like Bosphorus, and where you get the word phosphorus, which is something that glows in the dark, like on your watch, and that phosphorus. And when you shoot phosphorus bullets and they really glow, that's the ones with the tracer bullets on them. How bright it is. And phosphorus, phosphor. And so it kind of has a connotation that'll, believe it or not, it goes with Lucifer, and I'll show you that here in just a minute, but we'll get into that whenever that goes into it, I guess. But he's the god of the dawn star Venus. And by that phosphorus, it's amazing. Eosphorus is what they have in the Septuagint, referring to the dawn star, whenever Jesus is called that. And it actually kind of says Jesus is Lucifer, and it's like, no, the Lucifer is the light bringer, dawn of the morning star and things, and it's just, it heralds the morning. Oh no, it's all the end of the world. And it's, no. If you're up in the middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, you'll see Venus starting to rise up, and then it'll start to become light, and it goes away. And in the evening, when you go there, Venus is the bright star on the horizon, and it goes away. And they used to think it was 2 different ones, and then they realized it was the same one, and then they still gave it 2 different aspects, like yin yang peekaboo. But we'll get into that too, I guess, you know, a little different. Anyhow, the other 4 were Pyroas, which is the star Mars, Phaenon, which is Saturn, and it has to do with Phaeton, and a few other things that I did a video about 2 years ago, and how it hooks up to the ancient Greek and Roman Saturn, and that has more to do with El and Baal than most people realize, and I've done a lot of things about that. For Cronus is the same as Saturn, who is the same as El, who is the reason for the Bible and the Tempel and the Angel, Michael, Raphael, Ariel, Gabriel, Elijah. Yeah, that means El is Yahweh. Well, I could go all off into there, but let's just keep in this little group right here. Phaethon versus Phaenon is Jupiter, though. And there's Phaethon. And if where I learned that word from, my dad was into old cars a lot too and stuff and everything. And there was that gangster car that you'd see in cartoons that would turn around the corner, and it would take a while for the rear end to turn around the corner, and old Bugs Bunny stuff and all that. Well, I was asking my dad about that, and he actually said that's an old Ford Phaeton. And I was like, oh, like a Phantom? And he goes, no, they had the Phantom. This is Phaeton. And I said, what does that have to do with anything? He goes, I don't know, look it up. So, and quite often we would get that, and I'd find out something new. But then there's one called Stilbon, and that's Mercury. So there are some names that a lot of people don't know that are hooked up with those, because you know that the Greek names are what we use to this day for these planets and everything, right? Well, where do these come from? Just another aspect. Their whole pantheon was rich as hell. It's as rich as the pantheon of the Hindus in India. If you get into that and you find out all of their little aspects and things they have going on to it. In fact, I don't know, I haven't counted it up. But if you get all of them together, there's just thousands. Okay, so then you have Astrothese. So this is star gods. Theos is gods and has to do with religion. Star, this is star religion. Oh snap. And their spirits are living forms of the heavenly constellations in the sky that make up the zodiac and all the other ones too. They were mostly heroes and creatures who were placed amongst the stars by the gods as reward for some service, or in a handful of cases as memorial of their crimes. Yeah, there's a couple of them that are doing bad things. And I've told you before, you can take the zodiac and you can go round and around with some of these ancient stories, and it just kind of go tick, 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 tick. You can do it with the Epic of Gilgamesh and so many biblical tales too. It's quite revealing. Atlas, now we're going to go into, is a Titan. He was condemned by Zeus to hold the sky aloft upon his shoulders and turn it upon its axis. And this is who is making the world go round, is Atlas. Homer in the Odyssey seems to suggest that he was released from his labor and appointed keeper of the pillars of heaven, presumably the ones erected by Hercules at the ends of the earth. And so there's that idea of the pillars of Hercules and of the ends of the earth, and how the sun would set through those idea. And you take a look at that, and a lot of these religions had this special sun that were going to set, and whenever it sets, that's the sunset, but it goes through those two mountains or rises between two mountains and so on. But Set is also the god hearkening night in Egypt, and it's why we still use that word today, sunset, for he is the killer of the sun every day, and he fights him, and then Nut rose through the night, and he rises again the next day, and there's 12 hours or Horus in the day, and so on. I've made a lot of connections that hook up with that, so just go on. Aura, the Titan goddess of the breeze, but also she is a sun aspect. And really it shows that they had some idea of the way it really works, because thermoclines and things like that, we realize, are controlled somewhat by the sun heating up the ground and causing highs and lows and pressures, and then that differential is causing the wind. So the sun has something to do with it. But then you have that breeze, and that I can smell it on the breeze. Lilacs or caladiums or whatever. I always like the smell of honeysuckle, but we had that on our back fence on one part of it, which my parents considered a nightmare when we tried to cut it out of the fence. God, we had to kill it and then let it die and then try to break it all out of it. It was a nightmare, but we used to take them and pull the little thing out and get the little honeydew off of it and honeysuckle and stuff. But you could tell whenever it kicked up. You just get, if you walked out the back door, you could smell honeysuckle whenever it was in bloom. But that's another thing altogether. Aurae also are known as the nymphs of the breezes. So you get multiple aspect spreads here, and I don't want to go into all that. It starts to get boring and freaky and analytical. So this is just a cursory look at the sky gods and how that hooks up possibly to other people and connections in linguistics. Boreas, the god of the north wind. Damn it, it keeps doing this. Boreas, the god of the north wind, whose wintry breath brought the cold of winter, like Old Man Winter or whatever, he dwelt in a cave in the mountains far north in the land of Thrace. So this shows you connections that wasn't their god. That was the people of Thracia and everything. Who's that? Well, it's like the Scythians and all that. It's from the far north, and that's where the winds come down, and it ices over there, and then you know it's coming here. And just like we do, say like in Texas, we're looking for a northern to dip down off Colorado and dip down far enough that when it rushes across us, right, from west back to east, that it hits us enough. And quite often it'll go over the top of us and hit Oklahoma some, and it might even dip down further. Last year before, it actually even got Florida real good, and at the same time that it got Florida real good, we didn't get anything. So there are years where we get snow and years where we don't and everything, but that's caused by a lot of different things. Let's get off of that and back onto this. Chaos, the primeval goddess of the gap between the heavens and the earth. So this was pretty much the shield of air, and this is Tiamat and holding it up, right? She was the air which men breathed. Below chaos her laid the flat body of the earth, and above the shining mist of the protagonist ether. Chaos was the mother. Damn it, it keeps doing that. It's like it's going to try to put one out every 40 seconds. And I hit close ads, and now it says I'm just stuck on. Below chaos lay the flat body of the earth, and above the shining mist of the protagonist ether. Chaos was the mother of darkness and the night of the birds. And so you can see a connection with the Nana and the birds that they had, and ravens, and a lot of other hookups too, and things that you would even yourself probably try to attach to somebody like Tiamat, which is looked at as being evil from these people's point of view in the yin yang. But whenever you're those people, she's not evil. She's the bring her back around. But then later you have Marduk has to kill her and turn her into the sky. And it shows to be the same type of concept into here, and she holds up the sky. She holds back Uranus, if you will. But he's already dead. Well, no, he can't die. He is the ever-living God. Well, why doesn't he have more kids and everything? That's why they tell you that he castrated it. So the lineage goes on. For all these guys and their lineages, even Egypt and places have these primordial gods and titans that get held on through other parts, and all these aspects come out of it. Kion is the goddess of snow. She was the daughter of Boreas, god of the wintry north wind, and you can see how that works real good together. Kronos, the old god of time, who turned the wheel of the heavenly constellation. He was sometimes equated with Kronos, the father of Zeus. And yeah, it's supposed to be the same thing, and that's actually Saturn and Kronos and the Titans, and how it leads down through it, and that wheel in the sky that keeps turning. And when I was a kid, there was that Wheel in the Sky song by Journey, And I was studying this at the same time, and I figured out the cardinal points and things and stuff they were talking about, and it just all seemed to make sense, and it just, wow. Anyhow, Cyclops, the giant sons of Uranus, heaven, who forged the lightning and thunder of Zeus, their three brothers, the Hecatonaires, were the gods of violent storms. And so that's where you get that, but that's another aspect of what we already talked about too, and we're only in groups of them. Eos was the winged goddess of the dawn. She heralded the rising of the sun with her rosy brilliance. And this is just dawn. This is like you see it turn gold and start to apex, the opposite of a sunset. And sunsets are always prettier, but that's because you're looking back through more dust and a lot more clouds usually that had happened during the day. And when it comes from the other way, it's coming across and lighting it all up and starting it again. Brand new, but she's winged too, and looks just like Inanna does in those old photographs. And that little claw feet thing, ironically, looks just like harpies. And we're about to get there in just a minute. So now we get to Eos, like Eos, but Eos. This is phosphorus. This is the god of the dawn star, the star Venus. As seen in the morning skies, he was originally regarded as a being distinct from Hesperides, the god of the evening star. And this is the version I was telling you about, where yin and yang, and what are they doing? And also it looked at as being an aspect where in the morning she acts like this, but in the evening she acts like that. And then we look at Venus and Diana and Inanna, and they're a goddess of love that turn into a goddess of war because of what's forced on them. And a lot of these redheadeds and stuff like that they show in here, and these women don't hate no crap, and they utilize that in their stories, and you'll see it quite a bit through here if you knew what the depictions were of them and who they're hooked up to, right? So now we have Euros, the god of the east wind and herald of the autumn season. And it's funny how Europe, or Euros, would be hooked up to something from the east. But if you've been paying attention to my videos about Proto-Indo-Europeans and Scythians and how everything worked out and where this gets passed around, and how they had a giant chariot with a big sun disk on the back of it, and they carried it around with them along with yurts. They had the first mobile homes and stuff, but amazingly, that sun disk they have on the back of those carrying across, if we look at it closely, it has weird circles all over it. And if you paid attention, it looks exactly like that witch's hat that's made out of gold that they say already has the lunar calendar, the sun calendar, and everything, and it works all together. Yeah, and it's definitely like a witch's type hat, and they can find those all the way up in the Tocharian type area, all the way in the edge of China. Well, they can find the hats and everything else. They've only found 3 of the gold ones, and they're scattered across Europe, strangely. Anyhow, so then we have harpies, and everybody knows about these winged ladies and screech and cause problems and take away men, right? Well, they're demons of the whirlwinds and storm gusts. They were known as the hounds of Zeus, and sometimes whenever they do it, they turn them into dogs, but it's really supposed to mean the same thing. Not everything can be a storm aspect, and so you can see that showing different aspects of things too. Right? But they are blamed for the disappearance of people without a trace, because they used to pick them up and take them off to the sky, like an eagle would go down and pick up a rabbit and take it off, right? So that's where they get this concept of deal, and you can see it in movies and things thrown in your face a little bit, like if you ever saw Van Helsing, and whenever they did that, and they had those vampire women that were there with them trying to grab people with their feet and carrying them off and things like that. That's very much a harpy idea blended into the idea of vampires. And I've got a lot of videos about vampires and everything and where that comes from, and werewolves and stuff. I usually do a series of them when it comes around Halloween, and we're headed there right now. Now, Hecatonaires are 300 armed, 50-headed giants. They were the gods of violent storms, in which they were released from the gates of Tartarus And so now, which Tartarus are we talking about? Well, at this time, it looks like it's not Tartaria, that is Scythian type lands and Proto-Europeans, but that's Spain, that they were letting loose these huge storms from. Now we get to Helios. And Helios has a strange thing. It's Helios, and you can take the us off of it because Cronus and Perseus, and us is on the end of them, deifying it. And so that Helle, and so you get that Hellenes and Hellenistic idea. And the people of the suns, for Helios is the sun, right? And the other name for him is Saul. And people wonder what Saul's got to do with the Bible and everything, and they try to bring it into everything as much as they can. The god of the sun, Helios, whose orb, as he wore upon his head, is a bright aureole crown, Helios drove a fiery chariot drawn by 4 winged steeds. And here's an idea of a chariot and carrying the sun across, which actually goes with that Proto-Indo-European thing, and you can see where this conceptive is there and passed around. For there's a lot of people that had the sun god come across in a chariot with horses pulling it, but there were other people who didn't have that ideal. And if you look, they were the people that didn't have horses. And they didn't use a donkey. They just used different aspects. Hemera was the primordial goddess of the day. In the early morning, she scattered the mists of her mother Nict, or Lady Night, to reveal the shining light of ether, or the blue sky. And so this is the blue eye of Horus that they talk about, and so on. In fact, Hera, Hora, it works together. It actually makes perfect sense if you know the slight differences in linguistics that show quite often in these. Now, Hera is the Queen of Heaven. And I've made videos about the Queen of Heaven and everything, and how it works with Venus and the Milky Way and everything too. And the goddess that was, she's going to be married to Uranus, and then that formed Earth and so on, right? Well, the Queen of Heaven is the goddess of the air and starry constellations. The Milky Way was split from her breast, and most of the other constellation placed in heavens at her command. And this is very much like the Tiamat story too. So you can see a blending of things, and some people have really done, just all kinds of aspects with it. Other people, maybe not so much, right? But this is Astrape. This goddess right here is Astrape, and you can tell she's a angel. Got a halo glowing around her head and everything. She is a bringer of light. She is a star, and in her hands is Zeus's lightning bolt. Yeah. So it's amazing how it all goes together in a lot of ways that nobody wants to try to, that's pagan. Yeah, well, I don't know who pagan was, but he got a lot of people interested in this stuff, didn't he? Herse, god of the morning dew, and that has to do with Herse, the taking you to the gravesite too and things. But then there's Hesperides, the goddess of the sunsets. The 3 Hesperides tended the tree of the golden apples on Erythea, the Red Isle, and in the western stream of the river Oceanus. And there's a whole story that I could do a whole video on this Hesperides and how it hooks in, because with the stories they use, I could do an hour. The apples were, so this is the golden apples, and this has to do with apples in the Bible too. The apples were a wedding present from Gaia to the sky gods Zeus and Hera. They were the source of the golden light of sunset, created to celebrate the nuptials of the sky gods. And you weren't supposed to try to eat that. And you weren't supposed to try to ride the chariot, because it'll cause a big thing that sounds more like a comet or a meteor going across the sky whenever they describe it. Hint, hint. Or you don't want to fly too high and grab somebody's wax wings that make you look like an angel like this and fly too close to the sun, for if you do, it's hot and it melts your wings and you fall to your death. And Icarus. Hesperos, or Hesperos, the god of the